Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're breaking down a wild story, how a single disaster nearly took down a major mining company, and how a huge, risky bet on America might have just saved it from the brink.
So, the company we're talking about is SSR Mining. And what happened to them in early 2024? Well, it was a single event, a catastrophe, really, that forced them to completely rethink everything.
All right, here's how we're going to break this down. We'll start with the crisis itself in Turkey, then look at the staggering financial cost. After that, we'll dive into their big pivot to America, see how that turned things around, and finally ask, what's next?
Okay, so let's set the scene. The date is February 13th, 2024. And we're at what was, the company's absolute crown jewel, its most important asset, the Çöpler mine in Turkey. This is where it all went wrong. So the company's official filing, it uses this really dry language, right? A significant slip on the heap leach pad. But what does that actually mean? Well, a heap leach pad, think of it as a gigantic, man-made mountain of ore. They spray it with chemicals to get the gold out. And a slip? That's just a sanitized way of saying a catastrophic landslide, a total disaster that brought their biggest mine to a dead stop. And the fallout, wow, it was immediate and it was brutal. We're talking operations shut down with no idea when they'd start again. Shareholders immediately filed lawsuits in both the US and Canada. The company even got kicked off the Australian Stock Exchange. I mean, it was just the perfect storm of bad news.
So let's talk money. What does a disaster like this actually cost? When you see the numbers on paper, it's just staggering.
I mean, this slide right here tells you everything you need to know. Look at that. First quarter of 2024, the Çöpler mine brings in over $48 million. Fast forward 1 year, and that number is zero. A big, fat zero. A huge chunk of their income just gone. And it gets worse. On top of all that lost revenue, you've got the actual cleanup bill. The company thinks it's going to cost over $300 million just to fix the mess. That's cash they have to spend before they can even dream about making money there again. Okay, so your main engine is dead in the water in Turkey, and you're facing this mountain of costs. What do? SSR Mining knew they had to do something big. They needed to pivot, and they needed to do it right now. So they pivot. And they pivot hard to the United States. It's a total night and day situation, right? On one hand, you have Çöpler in Turkey. It's a massive liability, a huge question mark. On the other hand, they go out and buy the Cripple Creek and Victor mine, or CC&V, in Colorado. And this thing is the complete opposite. It's up and running, it's in a stable jurisdiction, and it's ready to start pumping out cash from day one.
And check out how they structured this deal. It was all about speed. The whole thing closed on February 28th, 2025. They put $100 million in cash right up front. See, this wasn't just them buying another mine. This was a lifeline. It was a strategic move designed to get cash flowing back into the company, like immediately.
All right, so that was the plan, a massive high-stakes pivot. But here's the million-dollar question. Did it actually work? Well, the numbers from the first half of 2025, they tell a pretty amazing story.
Wow, I mean, this chart just says it all, doesn't it? Look at the first half of 2024. The company is literally burning cash. They lost over $53 million. Now look at 1 year later, after the big American pivot. They're not just in the black. They've generated almost $243 million in positive cash flow. That is an absolutely incredible turnaround. And if you're wondering where all that new strength came from, here's your answer. By the second quarter of 2025, that brand new mine in the US, CC&V, wasn't just helping out, it was leading the charge. It immediately became their single biggest producer, responsible for 37% of all their sales.
And this number right here, this is the bottom line. In just the second quarter of 2025 alone, they generated almost $100 million in free cash flow. This is the proof in the pudding. It shows that their new portfolio, with its strong American anchor, was powerful enough not just to survive, but to become really, really profitable again. Okay, so SSR Mining pulled it off. They stabilized the ship, the pivot worked. But, the story's not over. So what's next? Where do they go from here? Right now, they're basically juggling a bunch of really high-stakes projects. They've got to keep working on that massive, expensive cleanup at Çöpler. At the same time, they need to fully integrate their new American mine. And on top of all that, they're looking at other growth projects, one in Argentina, and get this, Another one back in Turkey.
Yeah, and it's really crucial to remember the Chopler problem isn't going away overnight. The cleanup started back in April 2024, and they're saying it's going to take at least 2, maybe even 3 years to finish. So this is a long, long road.
So, when you look at the whole story, there's no doubt this company proved it's incredibly resilient. I mean, they stared into the abyss and engineered this brilliant financial escape. But it all comes down to this one big question. Can their new, stable American future ever truly outweigh the huge risks they're still carrying back in Turkey? That's the billion-dollar question. And honestly, only time is going to tell.